And Christy and her husband do, like, religiously do that when we're going through a tunnel.
Yeah,
they're like,
it's
hold
fun.
your breath. Well, you know that tunnel, like, right by downtown Phoenix? It's really
Yeah,
fucking
it's
long.
Yeah.
We went through it one day, and we were on the way back, I think, we're on the way back from something.
Yeah.
So, but I was tipsy, and I had a few drinks, whatever, and Nick was driving. So, like, you have to hold your breath. And I was like, I don't do that. It's stupid. And they were like, if you're in this car, you have to.
Yeah, you have
and I
to.
just pretended, because I couldn't hold my breath for that long. And I just pretend. And at the end, they were like, I was like, yeah, I totally did it. And now I'm admitting I didn't hold my breath.
She didn't
Christy.
do it.
I couldn't hold my breath for that long.
I mean, we're not swimmers.
Blame it on the alcohol.
We're not swimmers.
Yeah.
Christy and Nick.
Now you know.
If you didn't know before, because we talk about it every episode, now you know.
I only pretended because I thought she was going to be so upset that I didn't hold my breath. Because it sounded so important to her.
It is important.
Now I'm a dick. Christy, I'm sorry I didn't hold my breath.
She's not that sorry. She's smiling.
I can't hold my breath.
You can't see her, but she's smiling and laughing.
Okay, go.
Okay. Oh, no.
Oh, no.
We're good. No.
Okay, go.
Okay. Oh, she's buckled in. She put her roller coaster seat down. She's holding on for dear life.
Thanks for that, Kendra.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because she did the roller coaster thing on a Patreon exclusive. Okay, so this is the story of Gemma, and her last name's funny, but she's the victim. It's Gemma Hayter, which I would love to have a last name Hayter. Like,
It's
I'm
the
a hater.
Hayter, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, I
Hayter.
don't know this case, but I came across it. It was
Yeah.
on my list of possible choices, but I didn't look into it.
Okay.
So I'm excited.
Yeah. So my sources are not as vast as yours, but excuse me. I watched a documentary for BBC Three about Gemma Hayter. I read an article by Harvey Day for BBC.
Thanks, Harvey.
One by James, actually multiple by James Hockaday.
Thanks, Jim.
But one of them, James, for metro.co.uk.
I call him Jim.
And The Guardian. Okay, so Gemma Hayter was born in Rugby, Warwickshire, England. A little bit of a mouthful. In 1982. She was the third of two other children, so there were three children. She was the youngest. She had an older sister named Nikki and an older brother named Neil. And Gemma was a beautiful baby. However, her mother noticed that there were differences right away between Gemma and her other children. Mm-hmm. Gemma didn't look or have the same physical characteristics as her siblings, and her progress and development seemed to be lagging behind almost immediately. So her physical characteristics were very similar to features that are usually manifested by Down syndrome. Mm-hmm. And so Sue, her mom, took her to get chromosomal testing to a geneticist to see, like, I think that my daughter is lagging. I think she might have Down syndrome or some kind of genetic disability. However, the tests all came back negative, which is strange because when you hear her family members talk about her and when you see pictures of her, it's very clear that she has a chromosomal deficiency, or I don't know if it's a deficiency, but just discrepancy between what's normal. So if you look up Gemma, Gemma Hayter, you'll see that especially in her childhood photos. It's a little harder to tell as an adult. Yeah, and you'll definitely see it in her kid photos too. She has some kind of genetic difference between a quote-unquote normal, healthy genetic profile.
She is adorable as hell.
I know, she's the cutest little baby. I know.
She is seriously...
When you look at her baby pictures, she's precious.
She is the cutest fucking little child I've ever seen.
Yeah.
She has, like, the cutest ears.
Oh, little tiny hands. She's so cute.
Oh,
but it's also clear that she has a genetic disorder.
Oh, that makes me sad because now I want to cry because I saw her picture and now I know she dies.
Yeah, it's really terrible.
Keep going.
In fact, every test they did somehow came back negative. It was really clear that she had a disability, like I said, but doctors couldn't figure out what it was. So, like, nothing is coming back. Like, we don't know. Now, it was the 80s. And testing is a lot different than it is now.
Yeah, I forgot it was 80s.
Yeah, so Sue tried over and over and over to get Gemma help, but authorities even told Sue that she was just seeking attention. They're like, your daughter's, there's nothing wrong with her. You're obviously looking for attention. She's like, no, I have two other kids. I could have got attention earlier. Like, I'm concerned about Gemma.
Which is amazing. You get them, Sue.
Yeah. Gemma started school at around 5 or 6, which is about the age then. Because now I feel like kids start school like 3 or 4.
Like preschool.
Yeah, but then it was like 5 was very normal. She struggled right away in school. She couldn't even hold a pen properly. Like, she really struggled. And she lagged behind her classmates, even though she tried really hard to keep up. So in middle school, the school told Sue that Gemma was, quote-unquote, coping. which Sue was like, excuse me, I don't want her to cope. I want her to have the resources she needs.
Wait, what do you mean coping?
They didn't ever explain it to her. Like, I watched an interview where Sue's talking about it, and she's like, yeah, that's what they said, that she was coping and trying. I'm like,
oh, so like she's doing okay.
Because she was in a normal class in a normal school. Like, they wouldn't put her in a special program because she didn't have a diagnosed disability.
She's coping? Fuck you.
Yeah, exactly.
Not you, but
yeah. So Sue was like, she's obviously needs help.
Yeah.
So finally,
she's coping.
I know. So finally, Sue was able to get Gemma into a school for students with special needs, despite the fact that she didn't have a formal...
Like a documented disability?
Yes, like
or diagnosed.
A formal diagnosis. That's the word I was looking for. So Sue and her entire family still did not give up trying to get Gemma an official diagnosis.
The grossest thing just happened to me.
What'd you do?
I was itching my ear. This is disgusting. And but the inside, and I have a piercing that still kind of gets gunk on it.
Yeah, they always do.
And a piece came off, but then I'm wearing long sleeve, but then I felt it go down my sleeve.
I think I saw it fly out.
Sorry. Oh,
your ear's a snow globe. They did not give up trying to get Gemma an official diagnosis. Between the ages of 13 and 19 for Gemma had 29 visits for disability, and all were denied. When she was 19, she had 168 requests and checks, and still they were all denied. She had been given some monetary and mental support, but this ended when she was 24 for whatever reason. She couldn't access this state aid, I guess. And so her life took a dark turn after that. So once the little support she did have ended, Gemma was put into council housing. In England, that's public housing. So they give people really, really cheap housing when you either are out of prison or a drug addict or trying to get on your feet, things like that. The public housing, of course, no surprise, was in an area of town that wasn't particularly nice or safe. So this was exciting for Gemma because Gemma actually really craved independence, but it also wasn't suitable at all because she needed a lot of guidance. So Gemma was always an impulsive person. Even in childhood, she was imaginative, playful. She had a really good sense of humor. Despite those things, she needed help in a lot of daily tasks like housekeeping and personal hygiene. She just could not take care of herself in a way like somebody had to almost forcibly put her in the shower and be like, Gemma, you need to wash your body, you need to brush your teeth, things like that, like how kids are. Kids will never bathe unless you're get in the bath now. So her family was hesitant about her moving into council housing with no one to check up on her, like someone to help her tidy and almost like when you're in assisted living, like somebody like
it's that. Hard because she clearly craves and deserves to live independently.
Yeah, she does.
But then there's that but baby girl, you still need help.
Yeah, and I'll get into this too.
Her poor family.
She's very self-aware, and she realizes that, and she sends a letter asking for somebody to come help her with housekeeping and her life a little bit. She's like, I want to be independent, but I'd love if someone could come when I needed them.
Yeah.
So I'll get into that too. So she wants to be independent, but she also does admit that she wants the help.
Yeah.
So her family helped her move. They cleaned out the entire place for her. They got everything set up. They bought her a nice boombox system and really got it so it was cozy. So after the move-in, Gemma wouldn't let her mom or her sister into the flat, which they kept calling it the flat, so I'm going to call it, but the apartment, ever again. Gemma just was adamant and would not let them come in. So she always found an excuse to meet them outside. And it's probably because she was embarrassed at the condition of the apartment. Later, after she's murdered...
in the UK,
yes, it's a flat. Ends up being murdered, and so later... police go in and take photos as they're gathering evidence. There's literally, which this is a part I cried at because you see the pictures, there was garbage and food everywhere, knee-high, in every room of the house. It's like when you watch that Hoarder show is like that. There was trash in overflowing bins. Her bed sheets and pillows were black with dirt and filth. It's like she washed nothing. Her shower was stained. It just was really, really hard to look at. When she had moved in, she had quite a few valuable items. Like I mentioned, the boombox, and these were gone when her parents came in after her murder, or her mom and her sister came in. Like all people, Gemma deeply craved human connection, which was why she was super thrilled when she met a group of people who would change her life forever in a terrible way. It's not clear how they met, but Gemma met a group of 5 friends that lived in the area of town and were about the same age as Gemma's niece. So Gemma's niece was actually familiar with these people because she went to high school with them. And she said they were all kind of troublemakers who would get sent out a lot or sent to the principal, things like that. But she wasn't friends with them. She just knew who they were. To make it clear from the get-go, these 5 people were so important to Gemma that she saw them as great friends, but they never... It's not like your case where Janelle and Cece were actually friends. Like, they took advantage of her. They weren't her friends, but to her, they were her best friends for like over a year. So I'd like to call this a best friend case, which it is, because to Gemma, they were best friends. Yeah. But when you look at it from a third party, no, not her friends. So these 5 people took advantage of Gemma's naivety over and over and over again, her desire for friendship, and they used her for a variety of repulsive things. So the group of 5 people were Chantel Booth, she was 22, and Gemma was in her late 20s, early 30s. Okay. So Chantel Booth, who's 22, that was her best friend. Then there was Daniel Newstead, who was 20.
Oh, wait, so this is like 10 years after she moved into the...
She had been living independently since she was 24. Okay. So like 5 or 6, 7 years. Okay. But yeah, she'd been living independently for a long time. Okay. And these people were her friends for like a couple years. Okay. Quote unquote friends.
Sorry.
Yeah. So Chantel Booth, 22, Daniel Newstead, 20, Duncan Edwards, who was 19. Daniel and Chantel were a couple. Then there was another couple, Joe Boyer, who was 18, and Jessica Linus, who was 19. So there's 2 sets of couples, Duncan, who was single, and then Gemma.
Yeah, you know why you're single, Duncan? Because you're a fucking asshole.
The 2 couples and Duncan. These 5 people came from lower income households in the area, and they ended up getting into some bad crowds that used crack and heroin and kind of drug addiction crowds. Chantel and Jessica, so the 2 girls in the group, both had children. And I don't know if the children were by their partners now in this time or not. And I couldn't find it. And it really doesn't matter. So Gemma's family knew about the group of friends, but had not formally met them. Just they had seen Chantel a few times.
Well, and if Gemma thinks they're best friends, she's probably describing them to her family differently than they really are.
But when I think her sister saw Chantel a couple times and was like, I don't know why this person's friends with Gemma. Because Chantel was like, I'll post pictures because they all had Facebook profiles. And they were the type of people who would write things with letters or numbers instead of letters, like doing great, GRA, and capitalize things. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the worst kind of people.
They're the worst kind of people. Yeah. So Gemma told her family Chantel, out of all the group of 5, was like her best friend. So Gemma had money that she received on a monthly basis, and the group always went with her to cash the money and then convinced her to give them all the money because, after all, we're your friends. And she was like, oh, yeah, you are my friend. So she'd essentially give them all of her money every month.
Sarah, after this,
can we please go?
We're going to go to the bank, and you're going to take out all of your money and give it to me.
So
That's horrible.
I know. They also got Gemma to do some of their dirty work for them. Because of her medical condition, Gemma was really gullible. So they talked Gemma into stealing things for them on a regular basis. They also talked her into storing and hiding fairly large amounts of crack and heroin for them in her flat. They told her that they were presents for other people, and they didn't want them to find them and ruin the surprise.
Oh, I hate these people.
So she had them they had them in like nice little boxes, and she was storing drug dealer stuff at her house.
I hate these people.
They're terrible. So on August 7th of 2010... Gemma and her friends are seen on surveillance outside of a pub. They go to enter the pub, and Chantel realizes she forgot her ID. So the bouncer says that they can't come in because he's like, you need ID. You see in the footage, Chantel grab Gemma kind of violently and pull her up the street while the rest of the group laughs. Like, oh, you're making fun of Gemma. It's funny. So the next night, the group and Gemma go over to Chantel's house for dinner. It was hard to figure out what had happened, but apparently Chantel had left her bag at Gemma's house, which was actually a ploy to get Gemma to go to Chantel's house. And she's like, I need my bag. Like, you can come here for dinner and bring my bag. And Gemma was like, oh, yeah, I do have your bag. And so she brought it over. But while there, the group turned on Gemma and subjected her to hours of senseless torture. Why? We don't know. Trigger warning. This is a little, I'm not going to get into details, but it is a little violent.
It's torture.
Yes. Yeah. So they hit her repeatedly with a mop. They busted her head against the radiator so hard that there was a splatter of blood up the wall. Aww. They broke her nose. They beat her excessively, and she remained conscious and aware the entire time. They covered her head in masking tape so she couldn't see and she could hardly breathe. And they peed in an empty beer can and made her drink it multiple times.
She was probably, like, thinking about her disability, just so confused. Like, obviously scared, but, like,
she had to be confused.
Yeah,
she's like, these people are my friends. Why are they doing this?
Yeah, like, she wouldn't handle that. Like, her thought process would be a little, that's fucking heartbreaking.
So, finally, after hours of this, in the middle of the night, they told Gemma they were going to walk her home. Gemma could walk still. Somehow, incredibly. And they bundled her up in clothing. I think they were trying to, like, cover what she looked like. And also, she was bloody. So they, like, covered her in stuff, and they headed out into the night. So it was around midnight. There was a shortcut on the way back to her place through an old railway bank, which is essentially just like a little offshoot wooded trail, probably like a quarter mile long or something, or half mile off the side of the road. So they took her down there and they pushed her into the wet grass, continuing to beat her. They removed all of her clothing. It doesn't appear there was a sexual assault. But who knows? They wrapped her head inside a